Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you for joining us once again for our day 20, the second part of day 20. I promise us that we are going to start our day. So the last time we took a look at Spring Boot, and how we set up a Spring Boot and create a RESTful API. Today we are going to take a quick look at that and move over to front end to see how we can connect our back end with the front end, so that we know that we have a full stack application. So that's what we'll be doing today. We'll be taking a look at our backend that we did the other time. So here, to explain, I mentioned the other time that Spring Boot contains of different framework to allow us write a complete Java application, a complete backend application. And we started by creating a new project called EDU, which will represent the educational project that we are working on. So, and then take a look at a Gradle file to look at how we address this. Before we went into that, I mentioned that for our Spring Boot application, or for our general application, it is divided into configuration. We have configuration, and then from configuration we have configuration, followed by repository. This is design layers. From repository we have services, and then there we have a controller. And I told us that the configuration is where we set up the backend configuration or initial data that the application will need to start or to work with, or whatever parameter that is needed to bootstrap the application. Those are in the configuration layer. And then we also have the repository layer, and I said that the repository layer is the layer that connects to the backend dependencies, like database, like email server, whatever dependencies server that we have. The repository layer manage the connection, the actual connection to that backend. From there, we also have the service. What does the service do? This connects with the repository layer to make use of the connection and the functionalities provided by the repository layer to provide services that the controller will need. The controller actually is our interface to outside world, interface to outside world or external systems. So like say like a web application, a mobile application, a string application, all these ones are front end or external system that connects to our backend. The backend is the controller which exposes the actual API endpoint. What is an endpoint? An endpoint is a resource URL. Endpoint is a resource URL. That is the address to locate the resource is what an endpoint is. For example, I made an example of YouTube. Let's see the current video we are watching. We have https say www.youtube.com and then question mark watch equals to say watch slash watch com/watch, then question mark v equals to t86 h8 ekhodo. So let's say this is a URL that we have for the video we are currently watching. Here we can break this one to the HTTP represent the protocol. Yeah, so the protocol is the HTTP that determines the type of address. A protocol could also start with FTP. HTTP protocol defines type of address or URL, and then we have different types, which could be HTTP for web hypertext markup, and then we have FTP. FTP is for files, file storage and things like that. We have Git for Git repository. We have and other things like that, maybe like video files and things like that. That's the protocol. And then you have www.youtube.com. So this one is the server address, or IP. So server address, this one is the address of the server where the document is located. We are dealing with a document, which is the video that we are currently watching, the live video. So if you break it further down, we also have /watch. So watch is a path. It's defined as what? As a path. That is the street address. How do you get to the street address? So the path that you walk, the walk path, the virtual path that you walk to get to where the document is. So the document address is at watch. The path is at watch. The address is youtube.com. And the actual document, what you want to do is that we have watch, and here we are having question mark. Question mark represents what we call query. Query are like parameters you want to add along with a resource URL to define what you want to search for. For example, let's say we have another one. Let's say localhost, say HTTP localhost 8080 then /students /1. If you take a look at this one here, HTTP is the path. So HTTP now is the protocol. Protocol is HTTP, and our address where the document is located is localhost 8080, and then the path that we found here is /student. Now, so this gives us the results we are looking for. But we have another thing called /1 here, instead of the other one where we have question mark. So there are different parts of type of parameters. The first type of parameter is called query parameter. Query parameter. The other one is called path parameter. Query parameter and path parameter. The query, you use question mark, concatenate with. If it is more than one, you can concatenate it with say ampersand. Let's look at it. Let's say you want to do a search on Google for what is the definition of now, and then the result should be displayed in the in Spanish. Then we can say Google, let's say https www.google.com, that is the server address, then /search. Search is the document that opens us for us to search any other stuff. So it's like search, and then here we have question mark, q equals to now, and language equals to en, say en English. Okay, so we have this. If we break this one, you will discover that the path here, the protocol is https, and the address is google.com, and the path is search, and then q here represent query parameter, which is now, then followed by another query parameter called en, representing English. So that means two parameters will be sent to the backend. For the case of the student, we have slash instead of question mark. So the one that has slash is called path parameter. You get the parameter from the path, and the one that does not have slash question mark, then that is query parameter. Now, what are the verbs for relating with the backend? What are the verbs for relating with backend? I talk about rest, rest verbs. So here we have take our CRUD operation now. To do a CRUD, that is to create, we use post. You send a post command to read from a web resource. You use a get to that is read or fetch data. To delete, it's called delete. Of course, to update. Here you do what you use put whenever you want to update a resource, that is send a data to be updated to the backend. You use put. So we have post, we have get, we have delete, we have put. That's for CRUD operation. The other stuffs we can also do. We have something like head, that is get without data. That is, instead of returning the actual content, if you want information about the content, you use head command. The head command gives you maybe data size, whether it's available or not. That is for head. So we have post, get, delete, put, head. For other ones, you can look at that. Now that is for HTTP verbs. HTTP verbs. HTTP verbs. We have what? We have get, we have post, we have head, we have put, we have delete. Right? Now, that's HTTP verbs. Let's look at when you are searching for a document on the web from the server responds with some certain status. That's why we call it a REST. We call it REST. REST means what? REST in API design means representational state transfer. Representational state transfer. That is a design by which a document or a resource is represented by a state and can be modified, with the server sending different kind of state response. So when you send a get, for example, when you send a get, we can have a response. If the document is available, the server will send a status 200. 200 means that successful, available. Successful, available. Then we have 201. 201 means when you create a document, and the document is freshly created, maybe you are inserting record into a database, the server responds with 201, means that document created. Let's say you are filling a form, you are registering as a student. When you submit, the server return to the browser status code 201. When the document is submitted but the server is still processing it, I think it's 300. That is received, but further action is being taken on it. We also have 401. 401 means that what you are looking for is not found. File not found. Document not found. And then we have 500 series. 500 means that there is an error from the server. Either something has crashed from the server, or what you have sent is not correct. That is 500. There is also in the 400 series, there is also 403. 403 means that you don't have the right permission to execute that error. For example, in trying to log in to a backend or to your email, to whatever, when the backend cannot validate your credentials, 403 is returned. So those are different error code or response code when you are dealing with REST. 200 means what? Success, available, ready. 201 is also the same thing as 200, except that it's saying that something has been created on the server. So mostly you use 201 for when you do a post. That's the response to a post. When you do a get, you get a 200. When you do a put, get or put, the response is 200 when it is successful. Then the 201 is when a document is freshly created. 401 means that, for example, I want to get a student with ID 300. If that student does not exist, we return 401. Those are various error code, and the 500 is thrown by the backend if there is an error processing that very request, and the server does not understand what to do. You can get online and read more about various statuses, HTTP, status. Yeah, I should just call this one HTTP status. HTTP status. So having said that, let's quickly go back. To our Spring Boot application. First, understand that the application is broken to different layers, and these are the different layers. We have configuration, we have service, and then we have the controller. Controller is the one that generates the final document for the client to view or receive, and things like that. So we started by creating a new project. We created EDU, and then we did Gradle init inside the EDU. After that, that generates our artifact. But something very interesting that we need to, take a look at here. What we need to take a look at here is that the build.gradle file. So our build.gradle file should reflect what I have here. First is that we have the repos plugins, and from the plugins we have the Bootcamp, we have the group, we have this already. So what has changed? What has changed from what we have currently? What's that changed? Am I in the EDU project? No, this is database project. Let me go into EDU project. Let's check the EDU project. So this is EDU project. Inside the EDU, first is that we are going to have a Spring Boot. So here you need to take a look at this. Now here we have a new dependency that was added, which is all the Spring Framework Spring Boot Starter Web. This is the most important Spring Boot Starter Web. That's the most important dependency that we need for what we are working on, Spring Boot Starter Web. Now, so after this, we also have for testing Spring Boot Starter Web and then Starter Test. So that's the only thing that we added to what we have before. And then we apply plugin called io.spring dependency.management. So what does this do? This helps us to import from the library, the Spring Boot library, that can help us in writing a RESTful based application for our back end. So having done that, we do Gradle init. Then we broke our packages. We broke our packages into 4. So we have the controller, we have the DAO, we have the model, we have repository, and then we have the service. Why we broke it down to that, excuse me, I've explained that the controller is under interfaces. We will start from how to write a basic Spring application. To write a basic Spring application, after importing those, after adding the Spring dependency on our entry point, we need to annotate the app with our Spring Boot application. What is an annotation? Annotation is an easy way of injecting already built project into another project without writing additional code. let's say we have another application, and then we have a car hailing application for Uber, like Uber, and it requires the order module. We can import the order module and say that, okay, this type of application is an order application, even though it is for cars. So that's what annotation is. So we have Spring Boot application, and the Spring Boot is a collection of other applications. A collection of other applications like database, Jdbc that we did before, a framework for writing, sending email, a framework for generating APIs, a framework for doing so many other stuff, are packaged together. A framework for writing and retrieving data from database called Spring JPA. So the Spring Boot is a collection of all those ones. So when you import Spring Boot into your application, you automatically bring those modules into your application without writing much of those stuff. So we have a class app. We need to mark it as a Spring Boot application. Then we import Spring Boot. After that, in our main class, then we write spring application.run. So what this does is that it bootstrap, that is, it starts a new Spring application called app here. So whatever classes is now annotated as part of Spring based modules, the package will be injected, and then it maintains a cache of all those say services classes in a way that we don't have to go back and recreate them. So the system can, or the application at runtime can fetch those classes without reinitializing them. So having said that, we have an app. We mark the app as a Spring Boot application. We import the Spring application, and that is it. And then we can build gradual build. If everything is fine, we should see that it has built successfully. Now the next thing is that we have a mini. Let's start with something very small. In the control, we are going to work from like front end to the back end. So we are going to work from front end to back end, which is like from the controller now back to the back end. We've done the back end before. All we want to do is that we just tweak it to fit a Spring Boot application. So in the controller, I created index. Let's create a class called index, and we mark this index as a res controller. So what that simply means is that because the res controller, you automatically generate a servlet. A servlet is a Java class that generates or outputs HTML files. So we have a RESTful controller, and I call this index controller. Then there's another annotation called request mapping. You need to annotate that method. The mapping indicates the paths that you need to browse to get the content that you are looking for. For example, this one just says slash. That means it is default. We are saying that default page. On the default page, it should show welcome bootcamp. Welcome. Annotation also implies the framework from AWS provided for newly built system or app. AWS is another another application, another is a service provider, and there is no Bootstrap AWS application, but they also have their modules. So when we get to things like Hibernate and things like that, we are going to explain that further. So we have request mapping, and I say it's slash, meaning that and then this I'm returning a text message here, which is what will be shown when we put map. Request mapping has a default method called get. This request mapping, you need to specify what kind of method it is mapping to. We are mapping it to a get, that is, don't forget the HTTP verbs. The HTTP verb here is get. So we are mapping it to get, and we are saying that when this runs, it should output this. We can run this, say boot run. I think after building, go to build.edu.jar. So when you execute it, unlike what we were doing before, when we run our jar file, we will go to the part where the jar file is, right, and we'll run. But this time around, the Bootstrap is starting internally what we call a web server. A web server is actually the server that outputs the web content. So internally it's starting a web server called Tomcat. So if you take a look at this, you will see Spring Boot, which is the type of the application, and then you will see main bootcamp.edu.app. That means our main app. And then we also have a Tomcat web server, embedded server. That is the server that is being started. And if you go further, you will see something like Tomcat started on port, second to the last line. It said Tomcat started on port 8080. Tomcat started on port 8080. If you take a look at that, it says that this is the address, this is the port by which we can access the server, because a server is like a service that is running on a particular machine, and there could be different services. So the only way to partition the services, to break them into, let's say, different rooms in a house now. So each room has a door. So the door is the port. We call it ports, or port of entry into that service. In this context, it is port 8080. Port 8080. I hope you are able to see that. Second to the last line, the port is port 8080. You can refresh if you are not seeing it. Port 8080. So it's on port 8080. If you look at it very well, you will see that started on port 8080. Application started on port 8080. Started on port 8080. So I think that's that. Now the next thing is to go to our web page. Don't forget, it says it started on port this 8080. So we can go to our front end and just type http localhost. http let's see, so we type http localhost 8080 and press enter. You will see welcome to Bootcamp. Welcome to Bootcamp. That's what should be displayed for port 8080. welcome to Bootcamp. Welcome to Bootcamp. That's what will be displayed. Now, we also want to add additional parts. We want to add additional parts to it. This additional part is we want to mimic something like YouTube /watch. So we'll create the /watch parts. Let's take a look at /watch parts. /watch parts. So we'll go back. I'll stop the server. Then we'll go back to our code and change it to we'll go back to let's go back to that index. If you go to the index, move down, we can add additional method, and this method I put /watch. Don't forget the first one was /, the other one was /watch. You can put any part depending on what you want to display on the web page or the resource. So in this context, we have watch, and on the watch we want it to display this video. But then, because we have not done video tags and all that on the web page, we'll simply say that let it output unlocking your coding superpowers, day 20B of code hero journey, right? And then we have what? We have a Spring Boot. We have option this and Spring Boot, Spring Boot, and then Java, API. Let's say this is how it is. Then we save it. Then we compile again. We compile our application again. We compile again. If everything goes well, then we'll run it java build /leaves edu.jar. Don't forget, if you're on Windows, yours should be / build /leaves /edu 1.0.jar. we run it. So the server starts, and we go back to the front end to test whether it does what we want. So we go back to the front end, the web page. So we go back to the web page, and then we refresh. Then let's look at /watch and press enter. You will see that we have unlocking code power, day 20 of code hero journey. I think the last one update, I didn't save it, so probably compile that and save that. So that if we refresh the watch, you will see that we have now unlocking your coding powers. So we have created what we call two endpoints. The first one is the default endpoint. The second one is the one that has paths. Now let's now go back to our students project. Currently we have students, and then we have a student as what again? Address. So let's deal with students and address. Students and address. So we have the controller. We have a repository. We have a DAO, which we have created before. The DAO DB class. The DB class make connection to the MySQL database. We have done this one before, so we're just refreshing our memory on that. So we want to make use of that DB class this time around. Next is to create a package called repository. I'm sure we have repository before. We have repository before, so I'm not going to change whatever thing we have before. But the only change we are making is that we are going to inject a DB into the repository, which we have done here. We injected it so we can make use of it. Now, so where it becomes more interesting is that we are now marking this as at service. We are marking our student service class with what? We are annotating with a service. So when Spring Boot find any class that is marked as service, it automatically instantiates it. Unlike before, that we are in our create student, we instantiate the service class, we instantiate the repository class, we instantiate the DB class, and we pass them all together. But this time around, Spring Boot is doing that automatically for us. It's doing it automatically. All we need to do is to mark one as a service, mark the other one as controller. Having said that, so we mark as a service, and in our service class, we instantiate the student repository. Now, later on, we are going to, when we are doing JPA, yes, the source code is opened. Did I not change? Oh, so sorry. So sorry about that. So I go back to it so that I can, let me refresh it. So we created the controller, which we have done before. From controller, we are going back to the student's record. For the student record, we already have DB class, so I'm not changing that. We wrote that earlier on. We wrote the DB class, and then we are going to have a repository class that makes use of the DB class. We have done that before, so I'm not going to change our code that we have written. Then we create another package called service. Now, in the service package, we are going to mark this as a service. We annotate it as Spring service, and like I said, anything we mark as service, the Spring Boot will automatically create those classes. Automatically instantiate those classes and injecting any other dependency to it. So we go back to all the methods we have before. We have written all this before. The find door, the find by ID, and the print method. So we have all those ones. This time around, we don't actually need the print method because we're using print method because we're printing to the console. This time around, we are sending everything to the front end, to the web. So we have at service. So from our Spring Boot application, if we annotate the app as Spring Boot, we don't need to instantiate anything again, and then run the Spring application. When it runs, it will load the at service class because it is marked, it is annotated as at service. It will instantiate this class and every other dependencies that it needs to do, and that is it. Now, how do we access our students? Then we cannot say, let's create another controller for students. Let's call the students controller. Students controller. So we'll create another controller called students controller, and we will annotate that class as what? As rest controller, just like we did for index. So, and after that, the first part should be the entity in plural, which is students. We are dealing with student this time around. So we have /students/student. So any part that has /student means that we want to fetch all students record. We want to fetch students record. So we simply call our student service here, because it's a RESTful it's a REST controller, and then we have a student service to be injected into it as dependency. the student service is automatically created and it will automatically be passed to student controller. And we can now call this service student service or find all, that will get all students. What of getting student by ID? Then we can do a path parameter. This is how to add path when you put call brace. Anything you put inside the call brace is a parameter. So we have get students, we have get students. The get student require an ID as parameter. You can see. So if we build our application again, where are we? If you build our application again, just say, let's go back to the terminal. Let's go back to the terminal and build again. Gradual clean build. And then gradual, since we have built successfully, let's run the application. After it started, we can go back to try to check what we have done. Let's go back to the web and check what we have done. So on the web now, so we have /watch, but this time around we have /students. Press it. That will display a JSON of the student data. That will give us a JSON of the student data. If you are not seeing it, just refresh your web. So that will give us a JSON response of the student data /students. You will see all the student information. Let's say we want a single student now. Let's pick any ID say 1/1. That should fetch the student whose ID is 1. We can see this. So we can see it on the web page. This is where the work of the backend developer ends. Let's do one more thing. This is we're able to get all students. We're able to get a single student. What about updating a student data like we have done before? And what else? And creating a new student. Let's go back and add the update method. So we can have public void update, right? Updates. We'll have a path ID. We'll send it to path, a student with a particular ID, and what we want to update, we want to update the street, right? So I'll probably go back to the source code. Let's go back to the code. Right, thank you. So we should just have a public void update. Public void update. This is supposed to update let me see, is the server still running? So we have update method, one is shift command control shift option. Okay, so update. Let's have another method called create public void create. So here we have to create students. So we have update, we have create students, and then so if we are going to do create, don't forget when we are getting, we are using a get. When we are doing the update, it should be a put. In fact, let me put create before update. We update, and then for the create method, what do? We have a student, and then we call student service dot create, and then return maybe success. So let's do that. Maybe we just do, we first map. When you are creating a new resource, that means the resource does not exist, so there will not be any ID in the path. So it means we are doing a post, and then we are doing a post. So request mapping, request request method dot post. Okay, method equals to, or just a request method dot post. That will give us our post mapping. What is okay, so request method dot post, and for update it will be for update we have put, request method dot put for update, and then put we have because we are updating, we need the ID of the students. We need the ID of the students. We need the ID of the students. So we add the student's ID. So like we did for find by ID, we still need to have the ID of the students. Now we can go to our service class. What do they expect in parameter as parameter? In the service class, the create student needs the name, the street, the city, and state as parameter. So we can just use this. Go back to our student controller. In the create, we'll say this dot student service dot create student, and then we put all the parameters there. So here we have what? We have name, we have street, we have city, we have state. We have state. That is for the create. That's for the create. And for update, if we go back to our student service, we have the update. What does update do? We didn't write the method for update. maybe you will do that as an assignment. Try and do that, or we can actually do it together actually. Um, uh, um, so where are we? We're trying to student controller. Okay, create student. Create student. Let's say fine string. Fine string. Final string name, string straight, okay, so so string service, this one should be okay. So we have I can just say this one instead of say I think it's post face we have request method dot put, and the final string name, final string city, final string state, final string. Okay, city state. Okay, so path variable is imported. Let's be sure that it is imported. Path variable is imported. Path variable is and then let's say we can just put a map and we can put a map. This is post mapping, right? The other one is request put mapping. So and final string state, or I can just say, let's say let's even put student, right? Students, let's just say student. Let's just say students, and we annotate it as the object that is coming. So we have students, and then this student, we have, we can say request body at option. At request body. Why is that symbol disappearing? Okay, so at request body, let's say at request body, so we have student, which is the object. We request body should be imported. Request mapping, request body. This one does not need post again. If I put post mapping, at post mapping, at put mapping. So here I can just say final string name equals to student dot get name final string address equals to student dot get address. So now that we have the address, the street, we can just say the address is an object, sorry. So the street, we can just say address dot get street. For the city, we have address dot get city, and for state, we have address dot get state. Okay, so if we do this, then we just respond with we can just return with HTTP 201 that is created. Let me see. Address.getState, and then we can respond it with this response entity dot OK. Say student record created. What about update? We have not implemented the update, so I'll comment it out, but just say, we can say resource here updated. We can say results updated. So results updated. Now that we have this, there is something we can do because this one is So we can actually call a get mapping from here now. So here we have students, the ID, post mapping to students, put mapping to this. Let's import the necessary annotation. We have request mapping. I think import, let me say this, of the framework dot http, then dot response entity. This is just what to be imported. Having said that, what else do we need? Let me try and we have put mapping here. Say put, and then we have post. Let's try and build this. Let's see what we have. Let's try and build this. Okay, what is missing here? At request body. At request body, that's an annotation also. So just say at request body. What is address? Okay, we need address and student. Let's import student. We already have student, so we import address. From the model class. What is expected return? Expected return, maybe let's say response entity. Here, where is it? Here. We can put the data type here, since we are returning something. Instead of void, as a response entity of type string. This has to be returned. We'll do the same thing for our create method. Let's do the same thing for create method. Line 41, missing return statement. Okay, so that's built successfully. Let's take a walk through what we have done. So we have the student controller class. We have done a get student and get student by ID. We need to create students. Here we have a request body. What we are doing here is that we are mapping. That's what Spring Boot will do by itself. So the form that we are submitting from front end will automatically be converted to a student object, and that's what will be sent as a body of the form. And then so from the body we can now extract the details of whatever parameters that we require. Also, if we want to send everything as string parameters, then it means that we have different request.body, of type string for what we are going to do. So we build again. And then we run it. So how do we test this? How do we test create? How do we test update? That is journey. That will take us to our front end. That will take us to our front end. So let's go back to our front end. That will take us to our front end. So we take a look at a simple front end. Let's create a new front end, which is called, if we go back to our front end, we just want to do a simple thing, is that we want to be able to fetch students. We want to be able to fetch student record. We want to be able to display all students. We want to be able to display all students record. We want to be able to display all students record. How can we achieve that? How can we achieve that? How can we achieve that? To be able to display request post student data. So let's go back and create form. I think we already have a student page that we were working with. So let's go to the web project. Let's go to the web project. Let's go to the web project. Let's go to the web project and where is this? Okay, so in the web project that we had before, I think that was in the database, right? Let's see. Let's see. Okay, so in the web project, we have a student. We have the student file, isn't it? This is not what I want to show. Yeah, so we have a student in the web project that we were doing. In the web folder, we had students, and these students we have a way of displaying the students. We have a form for students that calls our students record, and this points to a JavaScript. And in our JavaScript, we got the students, and then we did a add, and our add method is doing what? Is statically adding something to the front end. In our add method is adding to the front end, but this time around we want to do addition to back end. Now, how do we communicate to back end in JavaScript? There is a function, there are different module that is available that we can make use of. There is a fetch method. There is also a function provided by a library called Axios library. So we can make use of a function to do that. So how do we do that? Let's say let's say we have this our add method. In our add method, we are just going to do this. what we want to do, we want to construct a student object that contains the. So if we take this student code now, let's see, so that we don't change too much of this. Let me write a new method. Let's call it add or create student object. So, and that requires student name. We need the street. We need street. We need city, and then we need what? We need the state. That's what we need. Now we can use a method called fetch. We can use a method called fetch. So, and what is this syntax? The syntax of a fetch method. Sorry. So the syntax for fetch method is to call the fetch, then the URL, maybe base URL. And once we do that, once you call fetch, then you call then returns a data, that is connect to a certain URL. After that, whatever data you receive, perform an operation on it, say do anything. Let's say our operation is called I just student.js. Why is my control key disappearing? So we have, okay, do anything with that. That's how fetch works. So what we are saying is that after that, use your data here. That's how fetch works. Now we have a form for students. Now we want to create students. So our base URL in this context, let's say constant base URL equals to http localhost say 8080 and then we have /students. So we want to get all students. We'll just run start students and then get data. When the data comes, what do we do with the data? We want to update the front end. We want to update the table with it. So we can just go ahead and add this method. We can now add this method and say data dot length, whatever thing we get from it, our response here is the data. You understand? Let's say response. What do we do with the response? We call the response.json. Response.json dot then whatever thing we got, say data. So whatever thing we got from data, we can use it to create this. So if we have had this s equals 0 s less than data length, then we can say string, let's determine data, says it's our data. Then I'll call this one student. I'll call it this students, and that will take us back to what we have originally. So if you take a look at everything, this is base URL. This is if we are fetching. Okay, this is for post, so we need to state the method. We need to state the method and say method post. So we send this to the server. This will create this should create dot then. Okay, sorry, I think I'm doing two things. We'll say find students or get students. Let's have get students, and this there's no need of this. This should give us the students record, but create students. We add the method post. Then this one we can just put an alert and just say student created successfully. Say console.log data. Okay, so that is that. However, how do we convert this? So we create a JSON of the data to be sent. We create a JSON of the data to be sent to the to the server. How do we do that? We will say constant student or post data equals to now student has name, and then student also has what address, but address is an object in the student. So because it's an object, so we create another object using call brace. We create another object using call brace, and that will give us it has street, it has city, and then it has state. think here we have body as a student or data and student. So this is creating student record, from front end. We call our JavaScript. So when we submit our form, we have add students. We add students. So okay, so we have add students. So in our add students, we don't need this one again. So what we just do is that we'll call this other method which says create students and post. Create students. I'll change this one and post. So here we can have this: create student and post name, street, city, state. So let's say we have a city, we have a state, we have what else again? We have a street. So we can get name, city, we can have a state, we can have a street. So that concludes that. I think we should leave it here for today. We'll wrap up the front end for our part C. So that we can wrap it up. If we have time, we can look at the front end framework like Angular to make it easier for us to work with. Having said that, I'll see you in the next